It's how I first got into radio. Even though I had zero experience, I just had to let my confidence help me.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my name is Diptii Shah, and welcome to my show, Artistry. Today I have with me Miss Aileen Alonzo Hayward, a presenter at Radio Television HK for more than 10 years. Hello, Aileen, and welcome to my show.
Hi, Diptii. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
My pleasure. My
I'm
pleasure.
one of your fans.
Oh my
Here in
God,
Hong Kong.
I'm yours. Aileen, how did your radio journey begin?
My radio journey began first in Hong Kong. So I was working in the banking sector. I worked there for 10 years. But before that, while I was doing that, I had this passion for music. And so during the day, I would work in the bank. And then in the evening, I would go out and play music in different bars in Hong Kong, or whenever they had jam nights where they allow amateur musicians to go in. And so I started doing that. And then the owner of one of the bars here in Hong Kong, it's called The Wanch. So it's one of the most legendary bands who support local music here in Hong Kong. So the owner, John Primer, approached me and said that, I really like your music. Why don't you do a regular spot? So I started doing a regular spot at The Wanch. And then that's where I became friends with Chris B. And then she's the founder of Hong Kong Underground, and they support Hong Kong indie musicians. And she said, you know what? RTHK is looking for a presenter to present their Filipino show who can speak English. And she said, I think you're perfect. I said, I've never done any broadcasting before. So I said, sure, okay, I'll give it a shot. And so I had a meeting with the head producer, Steve James. And then that's when he said that, yeah, I think you'd be a good fit. And then I was already feeling that imposter syndrome where I feel like it's a job that I might not be able to do, but I just let my confidence get ahead of me a little bit, because I really wanted this job and I really wanted to leave the banking sector, because it was, like I said, I've been working there for 10 years. And so when I got to the studio and then I did a demo for them, and they said, yeah, okay, we'll give you the show. And so that's the brief history of it. And then I was so happy because, like I said, I didn't have any background in journalism or in radio. So I was really happy to get that job.
Aileen, you are the producer of the show Pinoy Life on RTHK. Tell us, what does a producer do?
So as a producer for my show, what we do is we do all the research beforehand about the topic, because it's a 2-hour show. And what I did with the show is that I divided it into several segments. We have a news segment, a celebrity news segment, and then all the rest. We have sometimes guests on the show. We also try to look for the music for that show. So we try and make all the music original Filipino music. And then, so as a producer, what I do is I have to gather all the elements of the show. So including the news, the celebrity news, if we have any guests for the month. So I have to reach out to a lot of people just to get them saved on that day. So for example, in the Philippine consulate here in Hong Kong, we have different guests from different departments, or if we have somebody in the Philippines, we let them know beforehand and when they're available. And so we schedule them in throughout the next coming months. And then one more thing that a producer does is we also need to edit our music sometimes, like the intro jingle. So we have like a special music before the show starts. So that one, you have to edit that. And for example, this Christmas, I also had to edit some Christmas jingles for a radio show. And then we also have to make sure that everything is flowing smoothly during the show. So I present it at the same time. I have to make sure that everything is going well. And another thing for the producer to do is also make sure that the sound engineer who's recording the whole show is doing it perfectly, because it's going to be broadcasted and on the air. And we have something called dead air, which is more than the 3 seconds of silence. That's not very good for radio, live radio. So we have to make sure that there's no pauses that are more than 3 seconds, just to make sure there's no dead air. And
Right.
yes, another things is making the guests comfortable if they're in the in the studio with us. So yes, that's what we do.
Right. Aileen, you said that your show is a 2 hour long show. So, probably when you started, when you began 10 years ago, it was a novelty or something, but now you have serious competition from all the social media channels. So, how did you keep the show going for 10 years, and how did you keep it relevant and kept it so interesting that it is still such a famous show?
Yes. So social media, you're right. Social media is over the past 10 years have become the top way how people consume their information and consume entertainment. And radio is now this dinosaur, I have to say, that most people don't even have a radio, or they can't listen to it. But at the moment, our station has already been digitalized, so you can listen to us online, even though you don't have an old radio. So how we kept it fresh is that also through our guests. So we have a lot of interesting people over. We've had Olympic athletes, we've had senators, we've had celebrities from the Philippines. We had live musicians, singers, songwriters from the Philippines come over when they're touring Hong Kong. So we do an interview with them. And we've had writers and poets and artists. Whenever they come to Hong Kong, we invite them over at the show. So it's something that in social media, you can't really structure a 2 hour program, because that's too much. Social media is more about being faster and easier to consume, whereas radio, you can listen to it while you're washing the dishes, and when you're busy, or when you're gardening and you can't really watch on your phone and you just want to listen to it using your earphones. So we try and keep it fresh, and also we involve a lot of our listeners. We do it by social media. So we normally ask a question every week. This is a segment on our show called Join Kayo sa Amin, which in English translates to please join us. And so we post a question on our social media every week. It can be anything from your favorite childhood junk food to what are your thoughts on, for example, gay marriage, or we have some more lighthearted ones like what are your favorite quotes, or if you have a funny joke, please share it with us. So that's been really popular. So whenever we posted that on social media, we get a lot of responses, and then we read that back to them on the show. And so people like hearing their names and going like, oh, yo, that was me. They read out my answers. So that's one thing that we engage with them. And then another one is also we receive a lot of snail mail, like old school mail from the post, because we also receive from our listeners as far away as Siberia and in Canada. So we receive these snail letters that they want us to read out on the air. Sometimes they send poetry and stuff like that. So we
Wow.
involve our listeners as well. Yeah.
So radio has actually adapted to social media and made friends with it and is taking advantage of it.
That's right. Yes. We've had to kind of coexist with it.
Right, right. I mean, this is awesome. And you keep your readers engaged, so they're probably looking forward to, being featured on the show in terms of a letter or a comment or a request. That's a very interesting way of, keeping your audience engaged.
Yes, yes, very much.
Aileen, in this 10 years journey, did you ever regret taking up this job?
No, not for a second. I've always felt lucky that I've got this job. And it's actually a little funny ritual that I have with Chris B, who I mentioned earlier. um, known as the godmother of Hong Kong indie music. So she was the one who kind of approached me and recommended me for the job. So whenever I see her in Hong Kong and we're out, we see each other in a bar, I always get her favorite drink, which is a Cosmopolitan. So whenever I see her, I always ask the waiter to, can you please give Crispy a drink on me? And every time she looks for me in the crowd and goes, I know who got this for me. So I have never forgotten that, because every single show that I do, I love it. I put my heart into making all my episodes. And so I feel really happy and lucky to have been running this for 10 years now.
Fabulous journey, I must say. Aileen, on the other side, what has been your challenge during this 10 years? Or what are your top 3 challenges, if you can count them, and tell us about it?
The top 3 challenges, I would say, with the job has been, first was during the pandemic, we couldn't get guests into the studio. So that was a bit of a challenge. So we had to restructure our show a little bit during the pandemic to accommodate Zoom calls or phone calls or live calls to integrate our guests in the show. And one of our biggest draws before, which has come back now that the restrictions have been lifted, was having guests in the studio, and we can all take photos in the studio and then have like little live videos, or our guests can also stream it on their own platforms. So during the pandemic, that kind of dropped off quite a lot because the guests couldn't come over to the studio, and it's radio, so they can't really see if we're doing a Zoom call like we are doing now. So that was a bit of a challenge trying to get social media attention. And then another challenge was also because I founded this social enterprise here in Hong Kong called Pangyao. So it's a social platform for migrants here in Hong Kong and ethnic minorities. That started in 2019 at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was me trying to juggle this multimedia platform and the radio show in the middle of the pandemic. So that was a big challenge for me, trying to make it work, because it's a social enterprise. So we still had to try and get revenue, even though there's no advertising because everyone is shut. Everyone had to be in a lockdown. So that was the second biggest challenge. And then the third biggest challenge, which I think a lot of your listeners would be able to relate to, would be being a mother and also having a lot of things to juggle. So a mother, especially a mother of a young child, as women, we are still in Filipino, we say ilaw ng tahanan, which is the light of the home. So very much in the Filipino culture, even if we work full-time jobs, the family is still the focus of your life. So it's trying to juggle time with family and trying to juggle time with the radio, and then now Pangyao, and we have a magazine now as well. So it's trying to juggle all these things and wearing all these different hats, but still being able to give time to my family, that especially with my daughter's only 5 years old, and I don't want her formative years or her memories to be of, oh, mommy was always busy, she's not at home all the time and she has work. So sometimes I bring her to the radio show, so in the studio, and she can play around and she can see that this is what I do. Sometimes I bring her to my office, the Pangyao office here on Lama as well, so that she can see that, okay, mommy's busy, but I know what she's doing. And so yes, it's making time. And for my husband as well. So we try and schedule date nights. I'm not sure how many people do that, but we try and make time, because he works in media as well. And so his schedule is also packed. So we kind of try and make, okay, Friday nights or Thursday nights is our date night. And we try and carve out some time for each other.
Yes. Oh my God. These challenges are real, aren't they? Time management. Aileen, what advice would you give to a young person who's just starting on his journey or her journey as a radio presenter?
So if you're interested in becoming a radio presenter or trying to publish your own podcast, um, it would be probably trying to build out your confidence, because that's, for me, that's how I started as well. Um, like I told the story earlier, it's how I first got into radio. Even though I had zero experience, I just had to let my confidence help me and just go, yes, I feel I can do this. So if you want to start the show, maybe if you want to start your own podcast or radio show, I think this is the way you can go forward, is just thinking, okay, I shouldn't be nervous, I shouldn't be scared, I should just go for it and start with it. And then another thing, which I have to say, I think I told you this before, that you've done really well, is the branding. Is you need to have a certain aesthetic, you need to have a certain look, and then you need to have the focus of your show. You need to have a focus of your radio show or podcast. And you also need to be very good at time management, as you will know, because you need to do several things at once, or you need to line up several people as guests at once. So these are things that you need to think about if you want to start doing radio.
Aileen, now let us talk about your social enterprise, which is Pangyao. So what does it mean, and who is it for, and how are you doing in that?
So Pangyao means, in Cantonese, it means friend. And if you are an ethnic minority or a migrant worker here in Hong Kong, or a domestic worker here in Hong Kong, if you go out into the markets and then you go out to the shops that are owned by locals, you call each other Pangyao. Like, oh, Pangyao, how much is this? Or Pangyao, do you have more of this? It's like it's a polite way, or I would say it's like a common way of greeting each other, even though you have cultural differences or language barriers. When you say Pangyao, that makes it a bit more relatable to each other. And so we named our social enterprise. So I started it with my friend Martin Turner. So we were in the band years and years ago together playing music, and he works in a bank, and then he had a sabbatical because he wanted to also kind of look for a passion project. And so he contacted me because he knew that I worked within the Filipino community through my radio show. And so he said, oh, I built this website and I want to do something for the domestic worker community, for the migrant community. Can you give me your thoughts? And then he showed me what he built. And then I said, oh, okay, maybe we can build on this to do this. So it became, the first iteration of Pangyao is this website. So you can check it out. It's www.pangyao.hk. So we pulled together all the resources online. If you're a migrant or ethnic minority in Hong Kong, you can just go to our website and you can find everything you need. So we went out to non-governmental organizations, to different NGOs and charities. We reached out to them. We met with them face to face. It was a lot of legwork. We went to everyone. We went to government departments. We tried to meet up with the Equal Opportunities Commission. We went to the Philippine Consulate. We went to NGOs who involve Indonesian domestic workers. We met with the manager of the Center for Refugees, Jeffrey Andrews, who deals with refugees from different countries, South Asia and Africa. And then just trying to build our network and trying to get to know the community a little bit more. And that's how we started. We really started from the ground up. And yes, it's been quite an exciting few years now.
And I understand that you have a large, very large following of more than 35,000 people following you on the Facebook.
Oh, it's now 70,000.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, I think last time we spoke, it was around, it's growing exponentially, because I think we've tapped into a demand. Because even when I was a radio show, well, before Pangyao and my radio show, if I had a resource like Pangyao, it would be something that I would really use, because in terms of my audience in my radio show, I can look online at Pangyao and then look at the different NGOs, and they could be on my show. Oh, these could be my guests on my next show. Or what's the next community group? Or is there someone in the community who can help me do this? Or is there a government department that can help me do this? And so when we built it, the response from the community was amazing, because they said, this is something that we've never had before in Hong Kong, that's solely focused on migrant workers and ethnic minorities. And so that's how we built our network. And our Facebook page, just every day we receive, it just exploded. And then every day we've had to get 15 volunteer moderators from the community to help us moderate the page, because we need to make sure that everyone's safe. It's a safe space. There's no bullying, there's no swearing, there's no nudity. It needs to be wholesome and useful for the community. So they help us maintain the group. And also that we receive about 500 to 1,000 posts a day. And so we have to go through those. And then we also have to, if it's sometimes it's really serious questions, that we have to get the attention of people who know, like different NGOs or a government organization. For example, if it was a domestic worker who was fired by their employer and suddenly she's out on the streets and she doesn't know where to go. So there's some questions like that that are posted on the group that we need to act immediately and go like, okay, you have to go to this shelter, you can go to this shelter, give this NGO a call, or you can call this consulate. So yes, the response has been really good, and we're happy that it's useful for the community.
Aileen, whether it be your radio show or your community panya, you seem to be a very sorted person and very sure of what you want to do and achieve. What is your thought process? What keeps you going?
Yeah, that's a very nice question, because I'd like to say that I have to go back all the way to my mom. So my mom is my inspiration for all of this. Firstly, because she was one of the first domestic workers here in Hong Kong when President Ferdinand Marcos, before he approved the labor code to send domestic workers abroad. So my mom was one of the first one to leave the Philippines. So she arrived in Hong Kong in the late 70s, and then I was born in the early 80s. So when we were living here in Hong Kong with her, she brought me to where she was working, and she never shielded me from her work. Like, she was never ashamed to say that, yeah, this is my work. And she even brought me with her, and I would help her. I would watch her sometimes just doing what she does, and then when I was old enough, I would help her, and cleaning other people's homes, cleaning toilets. And so I knew the struggle of migrant workers and how difficult it is being away from your family, and how difficult it is to sacrifice being away from your family to look after another family. So, and such as domestic work, it's an honorable job, but it's difficult on the families that are left behind in the home countries. And so my goal with my radio show and with Pangyao is trying to connect people who are living abroad, people who are living here in Hong Kong, to the people who are living either in the Philippines or Indonesia or in South Asia, or where in your home country. So through my radio show, it's more we connect with the Filipino community, but with Pangyao, we can reach a wider reach of community here in Hong Kong. We published our magazine in Pangyao in 2020 in October, and then 2021 October. And through the magazine, we were able to share stories from different communities that would be inspiring, that would be helpful to other ethnic minorities and migrants. And it's something tangible because we're the only magazine that is dedicated to migrants in Hong Kong. We're the only free lifestyle magazine for ethnic minorities. And it's our pleasure every time we make our issue, or whenever we publish the next edition, we try and make sure that the stories are there, that we're reaching out to the local community and not just alienating them, but rather introducing the culture, this vivid culture of different nationalities here in Hong Kong, and making sure that everyone is, making them aware of our stories, and we exist, and we're also in Hong Kong, and this is also our home.
Absolutely. I think, Aileen, you're doing a fabulous job, both as a radio host, I mean, to keep going for 10 years and to keep it relevant and interesting and, happening, how the youth is, and also with your community work at Panyo. And I wish you all the best. And it was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Diptii. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an honor.
Aileen.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your time. Please do consider subscribing to my channel. I would love your support. Thank you.